Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode here of the Big Break Podcast, covering all your Big Ten sports needs. We have a great show for you here on this beautiful Saturday. We normally come to you on Sundays, but special episode here this Saturday. How you guys doing on this fine Saturday morning?
Good, good.
Alive.
Yes,
Alive and
sir.
well.
Stoked.
Stoked, enjoying a great Masters week. I know we all are. Except we won't be talking golf. But we are going to be talking about the Frozen Four and how the Big Ten finally has a chance at a championship here coming out of the winter and going into spring with Minnesota making the championship game. Unfortunately, Michigan couldn't hold up their end of the bargain to make it an all Big Ten final. But what did you guys? Congrats to Minnesota, right?
Absolutely. Uh, Definitely looked good. I don't know. I 4 goals in the third period. That's a bit of a deal breaker for Boston. I don't know how you kick Minnesota in the teeth to start the game and then choke that bad in the end. But congrats to Minnesota. Hopefully, we can pull one out here.
Absolutely. It was kind of a like Minnesota had a goal taken away, or like a few actually, in the second or in the first period and in the second, that could have actually made this a very more ugly loss for Boston.
I didn't see that. That's all. That's good. I mean, I'm glad to see Minnesota won.
Absolutely. Drew, any thoughts on the Frozen Four action?
Yeah, I thought both games were pretty solid. Both games were tied 2-2 heading into the third. And then the third periods were where both teams just kind of took over. Minnesota, like Ethan said, 4 goals in the third.
I'm telling you,
They
Coach
win.
Staley.
Quinnipiac, 3 goals in the third. They win. Shout out to both goaltenders. Both goaltenders from the winning teams actually had the same stats. They went 29 of 31, 29 saves on 31 shots. So shout out to the goaltenders, the unsung heroes.
Holy cow.
That's actually incredible. To have the same stat line from in two separate games as goalkeepers, that's awesome. Corey, your thoughts on the Frozen Four there?
I mean, I'm not a big hockey guy, but from what I watched of it, it just looked like Minnesota was just the best team out of the four teams playing. They look bigger, faster, bunch of NHL stars. I know Michigan had a bunch of kind of young stars, but it just, congrats to both teams, to Minnesota, obviously, and Quinnipiac. I mean, it just Minnesota, I think, has been one of the best teams all year, and it just seems like they're just kind of on a, a destiny run right to the championship.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think I think honestly this is Minnesota's year to win it all.
I
If
hope so.
me too.
agreed.
For
Number
the
one
But
seed for a
Titans.
reason.
well, yeah,
Absolutely. And
I
go ahead, Ethan.
I would say, yeah, I mean, Logan Cooley looked great. I didn't get to watch any of the Minnesota game. I did sit down and watch the Michigan game. Cooley and Luke Middlestat had 2 goals and an assist each for Minnesota. Minnesota 42% on the power play, 3 of 7. Looked good. Sitting down and watching the Michigan game, a lot of possession issues, transition, offensive zone passing, just possession issues all the way around. Camus Casey looked great, and so did Adam Fantilli, who did just win the National Player of the Year award the next day. So they got ousted, but Michigan's likely number 2 overall pick in the NHL draft won Player of the Year, the Hobie
Oh,
Baker
nice.
Memorial Award. 65 points as a freshman in 36 games.
Ooh,
Wow.
that's a lot. That's a lot. As we look forward now here to the championship game, which will be tonight on ESPN2 at 8 p.m. You'll have Minnesota versus Quinnipiac. What do you guys look? What do you think Minnesota needs to do in this game to take home the title?
Just be themselves. They've
Yeah,
been what they've been all year.
Mhm.
I mean, just kind of. I mean, the one thing they kind of said during the Michigan game when they were playing Quinnipiac is the one thing you don't want to do against Quinnipiac is go down a couple of goals because they just fill the space so well. But I think if Minnesota plays Minnesota hockey, they're going to win. They're just better. It just seems that way.
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, I agree. I think Minnesota just plays the way they've been playing all year. They'll get it done. Minnesota's going for their sixth national title in hockey,
Oh wow.
whereas Quinnipiac has never won the national championship in hockey. They were runners up in 13 and 16. So if you like the underdog, this is it.
No, I'm going Big Ten. I'm going
It's
Big
fair.
Ten here.
I mean, we kind of have
Yeah,
to, right?
Right.
just Minnesota just has to be themselves, control the puck, don't do anything dumb. I mean, Quinnipiac was all over Michigan when they made a mistake. It felt like they were playing with seven guys on the ice, and not even just with the goalie. They were everywhere.
Absolutely. I think for Minnesota to win this game, like you guys said, be yourself. Um, I don't think you can get caught up in playing Winnipeg's game. You have to play, go for hockey. And control the puck, play smart, limit your penalties, keep guys out of the box as much as possible. And if you move the puck down in their end, like they were doing in the final or in the Frozen Four, um, they're gonna get some goals. So I think at the other end, it just depends on how well they're able to transition from the defensive end of the ice to the offensive end of the ice. And
Yeah, I
if they're
agree.
able to capitalize on, some of those breakaway opportunities that you get in hockey.
Yeah, I think winners first to three, actually.
The first to three goals, you think that the
Yeah,
winner has? You know what? I honestly would take that action. As a betting man, I would take that
Same.
action. I think first to three, Ethan. I think you nailed it there. I think if Minnesota, whoever gets the first to three goals is going to win this game.
yeah. Heavy control, first to three goals takes the chip.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else here, guys, on the Frozen Four? I know we don't talk much hockey. Um, anything else here you guys had on the Frozen Four at all?
Go
No,
Gophers.
everything.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, go first,
Let's
dude.
go Gophers. All right. Um, Next weekend, a week from today, we have we have three spring games. Two are going to be big spring games, just out of, what you may see coming from a couple key positions out of these two teams. And then we have another spring game from a program that Drew is wearing, the Hoosiers.
Yeah,
Um,
big program.
big big program, a little
Come
underwhelming
on, man.
season last year, but so those three games are going to be Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana's spring games. Let's start with Indiana here. Drew, since you're wearing the Hoosiers, you're wearing them with pride right now. Let's go to you.
All right. Yeah, this is a huge season for Indiana. Tom Allen needs some sort of success this year to not get bought out, not to get fired. But I think they possibly could do it. The defense coming back is pretty all right. The offense is the bigger question mark. They have the second fewest returning starters behind Northwestern in the conference. They're returning 65% of their offensive production, 72% of their defensive production. They were in this past cycle, they were last in the conference in recruiting rankings. That's a bad sign. However, they were first in the transfer portal on total players. When you take the player average, that drops them back down into the middle of the conference.
Okay.
So 18 transfers coming in. That's a lot of kids to try to come in and gel with your culture. So it'll be interesting to see how those transfers work out. The quarterback position is the most important position in football, and it is a huge question mark at Indiana this year. They've got Dexter Williams, who is coming off a knee injury last November. But before he went down, he looked pretty good. He's kind of a mobile running quarterback. They also bring in transfer out of Tennessee, Taven Jackson, who is actually Trace Jackson Davis's younger brother. He's a 4-star quarterback. So he's highly rated. However, he only attempted 4 passes at Tennessee, so he obviously doesn't have pretty much any experience. They also bring in a 3-star quarterback, Brock Lowry. to compete. He's enrolled for spring. So the quarterback position is quite a question mark. But maybe Taven Jackson lives up to the hype that he was supposed to have coming out of high school. Some big transfers coming in. Wide receiver DeKeese Carter out of Fordham. He was a 4-year starter at Fordham. He finished his career with over 3,000 yards receiving. He is top 3 in Fordham University in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and top 10 in career receptions. So this dude is a player, which is good because the Indiana offense needs a weapon. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'm a big MAC guy. So they brought in Andre Carter, who was one of the best defensive linemen in the MAC. He's from Western Michigan. He was second team all conference last year, I believe. So, yeah, if the transfers can gel well and the offense can step up, maybe Indiana has a nice season.
Who do you think is going to get the most quarterback QB1 reps in spring? Who do you think's taking most of those right now?
I would probably say I don't know exactly how healthy Dexter Williams is, but if I were to guess, I would say he would be QB1 just because he's been in the program for 2 years.
Huh?
But like I said, Taven Jackson comes in with this big hype. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was taking QB1 snaps right now. But I think it's between those two. I think Brock Lowry is just kind of the third guy, maybe a red shirt.
And Taven Jackson transferred in from Tennessee.
Yeah. Yep. He left Tennessee
to come home. Actually, he's from Greenwood.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
That's actually that actually is going to be a great. I think it's going to be a great transfer for the program. Tavian Jackson, just because of he was recruited by an SEC school, so you would believe and know the kid can play football to somewhat of a high level, right? But also I think that's good for the Indiana program as he is a Hoosier, born in the state, raised in the state. And I think what that shows you is, hey, I was a big name guy. I came home. Why aren't you guys coming, supporting our in-state university? So I think that could be a great program builder, even though it's from the transfer portal. I think it still could be a good program builder in the future for Allen there in Indiana. Ethan, just get your response here from on Drew's very well done analysis of the Hoosier football.
Very, very well in depth. I had a few notes here. Definitely touched on the quarterback thing. I did see Tom Allen is keeping it very close to the vest going into the first spring game since 2019. They have not had one the last 3 years. Anything I found said it was boiling down to Taven Jackson or Brendan Sorsby, uh, possibly starting this year, depending on all performances. I couple names Drew threw out I was not fully aware of, so my apologies there. The only other real note I have here is can the defense step up and force more turnovers? They had 20 turnovers in the 2020 season, and they've only had 22 combined since. That's 128th nationally, and Deshaun McCullough transferred out, so it's a huge loss on the IU defensive side. Hoping they can turn that around and get back into the middle of the pack in a bowl game in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. I just want to before we get Corey's response there, I do just want to take touch on that a little bit, Ethan. I think their defense is actually going to get a step up here. As I was just looking here at their roster, they got Jameer Johnson, a defensive back, 6 feet, 170 pounds, junior from Texas, transferring in from Texas. They got a good defensive lineman, and Patrick Lucas Jr. He's 6'3", 321. He's a redshirt senior, transferring in from Ole Miss. They got another defensive line guy coming in from Ole Miss. He's a redshirt senior, Ladarius Cox. He's 6'4", 298. They got another defensive tackle or defensive lineman, 6'4", 287, Marcus Burris Jr., transferring in from Texas A&M. They got a stud linebacker who's 6'4", 241, transferring in from Stanford, and that was Jacob Magnum Farrar. So as I was just like looking here, oh, and then they got a Michigan transfer, Zach Carpenter. He's an offensive lineman. He's 6'5", 292. So that's on the opposite side of the ball. But just looking at their defensive transfers, I think they have
Yeah.
maybe two, possibly three guys who are going to step in and make an immediate impact for this Hoosier defense. So I don't think it's. I think you can, to your point though, Ethan. I think you can expect them to increase their turnovers and be a little more stout on defense this year than they were last year.
It'd be nice.
Absolutely, it would be. We need to get some of these middle teams back up to where they were before the COVID year hit. Corey, your thoughts here going in on Indiana's spring game?
Yeah, I mean, the guys have kind of already touched on it. I really like Taven Jackson. I think he's going to come out and be the starter. I think he's just got too much talent to not be the starter, especially for a team like Indiana. You need to although he might not know the system as well, sometimes it's just about getting the better athletes the ball. So I think I look for him to kind of win the job. I think for me, the big key for Indiana, which again will be the key for the majority of the smaller schools in the Big Ten, is it's going to be the lines. How's your offensive line going to play? How's your defensive line going to play? You've mentioned all the transfers for coming in on the defensive side of the ball. I think obviously with the returning starters that they had coming on defensive line, and linebackers and corners, I think I look for the defense to be a lot better this year than it was last year, and force turnovers, like you guys have said. Offensively, it's all about the offensive line. Last year, when you watch an Indiana game, people are creeping in the backfield within a second. So the offensive line they've addressed. They've got a few transfers coming in. They return a few guys on the offensive line as well. It just seems like they're a young team on their lines, and they need to just kind of bulk up a little bit. But I think overall, I think the lines are going to be a lot better. And just the person I had the player to watch was Andre Carter on defense. Drew mentioned it. I think he's kind of a guy who can come in and make plays as he made plays before at his previous school. So I just look for him to kind of roam around and make some plays.
Absolutely. With this being a lot of transfer portal guys coming into these schools like Indiana, Purdue, um, Rutgers, even Maryland, um, these middle of the year pack Big Ten schools. Do you think this is how they are going to be able to start competing with the Ohio States, your Michigans, your Penn States, your Wisconsins of the Big Ten? Um, is the transfer portal their only way of competing with them? Or is it, a mix of, hey, we got it hit on our guys in recruiting, and then we need to fill those spots in through the transfer portal?
I think it's going to start with the transfer portal. Personally, I think once you bring in a core group of guys that out of the transfer portal talent, and they mesh with the coaches, and the coaches are capable of showing that you can produce with what you got out of the transfer portal, then you're going to start getting those recruits in. You're going to start getting those 3 stars, the high 3 stars, the 4 stars. You're going to start getting a 5 star here and there. So you just have to show that you are competent and capable enough to produce with what you're getting out of the transfer portal from these big name teams, out of the SEC, out of the Pac 12, out of the Big 12, even out of your own conference, the Big 10 from other schools, maybe some kids going back home. So once you get production with your recruit or your transfers, you'll get production on the recruiting side as well.
Absolutely. Drew, you were looking like you were contemplating an in-depth response there when I was posing the question. So I'm going to go to you here for that, for your response.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with what Ethan just said. I mean, if you can show success in bringing in transfer kids and making them successful, then that's going to have more transfer portal kids look at you, right? But I don't think recruiting transfer portal kind of exclusively is long-term sustainable. Ole Miss has been dominating the transfer portal since it started. But I don't think it's going to lead to long-term success. I think it's all, I think building a program is all about the foundation. And if you don't have a foundation, like you're just going to crumble eventually. So I think recruiting is still number one, but you can't be Dabo Sweeney and not address the transfer portal because it's there for a reason.
Absolutely, absolutely. Corey, do you think it's more important for these coaches to put emphasis on the transfer portal or still put their more emphasis on recruiting, like they're
I
on
think
the
it's
recruiting
recruiting.
trails?
I think it's recruiting. I mean, I think transfer portal is great, but the transfer portal helps and makes or breaks teams. You know, I think you can't go in and say, "Oh, we're going to sign 18 transfer portal guys." You got to make sure you get the right guys that fit the right spot for your team. You know, I think it starts, at a place like Indiana. I think you kind of said it earlier, Nick. I think it starts with recruiting Indiana. You have to recruit the state of Indiana. You have to bring guys in from the state of Indiana to your program. I think a lot of things, the big thing, and you see it at kind of other schools, is trying to hold on to those guys. Maybe the freshman comes in who's not going to maybe play a lot because there's a junior in front of him, but you got to maybe hold on to those guys because those guys are the guys that learn, know the playbook, and are the heart and soul of the team. So I think the transfer portal is great, although it can help. It can help a lot, and I think it will help Indiana a lot this year. It's not something that you can really rely on because you never know who's going to be in the transfer portal. There's going to be a lot of guys in there, but sometimes there's a reason those guys are in the transfer portal, and it's not necessarily the perfect fit.
Absolutely. I think for our middle of the Big Ten schools with the transfer portal, I think it starts with making sure you have all of your needs on your team met first through recruiting and then filling in spots, um, and maybe not even at starting position spots, like you're not going out trying to get a starting corner. You're not out there trying to get a starting safety or, a starting wide receiver. I think it's more or less building using the transfer portal to build depth at your program. If you're these middle of the pack guys, because unfortunately, I think the guys that would obviously not make it, anybody's can make an impact immediately, in my opinion, but I think the guys who are going to take your team above what you are currently doing, those guys who are in the transfer portal are looking at one or two, maybe three schools. And unfortunately, your Indianas, your Marylands aren't that. Your Purdue's are not those schools. When you're looking at those schools, you're looking at your Ohio States, your Michigans, maybe your Penn States, depending on, what recent success Penn State's had. You're looking at your Alabamas, your Georgias, your LSU's, your USC's, your UCLA's, your Clemson's of the college football world. That's who you're looking at if you're, like a Marvin Harrison Jr. leaving Ohio State. You're not going to leave to go to Indiana. You're leaving to go to another big program, right? And I think we could all agree having a player like Marvin Harrison Jr. on Indiana's team would maybe not necessarily make them a 10-win team, but they're sure as hell a 6 or 7-win team with him on the
You still got
field.
to find a guy. You
You know,
still got to find the guy to throw him the ball.
well,
Yeah,
absolutely, but I'm just
same
saying
thing.
same thing. But what I'm saying though is if you're not going to get that one guy like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or even like a CJ or Justin Fields, is it transferring from Georgia to Indiana, right? You're not going to get that caliber of a transfer portal. So I think when you're looking at the transfer portal, if you're Tom Allen, if you're some of these head coaches that taking over Purdue, taking over Maryland, Rutgers, I think you need to start building depth within your program rather than trying to go hit a home run with a Justin Fields type of quarterback or caliber quarterback, or somebody who's going to be a first round draft pick, because those guys, in my opinion, are looking at the cream of the crop of college football. Who's going to get me noticed for this 1 year that I have left? Who's
Yep.
putting
And
me
I
on
mean,
national TV?
it's about keeping the guys. Like I said, I mean, look at Indiana a couple years ago. Michael Penix Jr. He was at Indiana. He's potentially a Heisman front runner this year at Washington. Why couldn't you keep him in the Indiana program, which would have made you instantly better last year if they had him at the quarterback position just based on his talent?
I think a couple things go into that, especially for Penix, is I think you're looking at Indiana, being at Indiana, and you've seen what Ohio State's done to you. You see what Michigan's done to you. You see what Penn State's done to you, and you go, I'm not going to get noticed around the CJ Strouds, your McCarthy's, and God knows whoever's going to be at Penn State. It seems like you have a McSorley or Mc something rather there at Penn State every year. Um, but I feel like for a guy like Penix being at Indiana, you look at those, those caliber quarterbacks and you go, I'm not even close to that. So I'm not getting noticed here in the Big Ten. If I can go to a Washington or a Utah out in the Pac-12, their conference is bad. You only really compete with one team or two teams. And recently, those two teams that team has been Utah being back to back, Pac-12 champs. Or sorry, yeah, they won back to back, didn't they? They won it this past year.
Utah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Utah. And then you're looking at historically, USC has been the cream of the creme of the Pac-12, and you're still looking at Oregon. But I don't think I think when you're looking at Penix, you go, oh, I only got to compete with Caleb Williams to get some credit out here in Washington. I think that's more desirable than competing against three or four other top tier QBs that you would be facing in the Big Ten. Same thing of why he didn't go to the SEC.
I don't know if I agree with that 100%. I mean, I see what you're doing, but I think going into the preseason, Michael Penix was like rated the ninth best quarterback going into the 2022 season in the Pac-12. You had DTR, Caleb Williams, Cam Rising, Cam Ward, Bo Nix, Tanner McKee. There's quite a bit of talent out in the Pac-12 going into last season. Um, I get what you're saying. I mean, but there's still other reasons that he left Indiana. Kid from Tampa, Florida, to go out another X many thousand miles away to take a starting job at a probably a better program with a richer history.
Absolutely, but I
Yeah.
think part of that decision of him leaving Indiana has to deal with look who I'm going up against. These guys are first rounders. Bo Nix isn't a first round quarterback. I think the only first round quarterback you have out in the Pac-12 is Caleb Williams. And when you're
Tough,
looking at that, you're going,
tough,
I
tough.
Bo Nix.
I don't think he left. I don't think he
Mm.
left because he saw the competition. I don't think that has anything to do with it. He made the best decision for him and all, for him. But like to me, it's not about necessarily the player. It's you look at the head coach and you say, okay, regardless of what we are, he's what we got to do. We got to make sure we keep him in this locker room. It's not about, oh, the player wants to leave. People leave all the time due to family issues and all that other stuff. You got to keep him in Indiana because there's no reason why him going 20,000 miles away from his house in Florida after he already came 10,000 to Indiana, why is he going that much farther? Does
Yep.
Washington give him that much of a better chance to be shown and be shown? Because I don't, here on the East Coast, West Coast games are at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. That's less exposure than what he would have gotten here at Indiana.
Is
Yep.
it
I
though?
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I see. I
I
In my opinion, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate. I don't think so because here on the East Coast, you're not unless you're unless you're one of the top teams in the big in your conference. Like unless you're Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, or even unless you're Alabama, Georgia, LSU. I can even go with Miami, maybe in Clemson. I you're not being put on national TV. So at least out on the West Coast, yeah, that game may be here on the East Coast at 10, but that's prime time out on the West Coast, and you're on national TV.
Yeah, but Indiana plays a night game against Michigan, Penn State, or Ohio State every year, so they're
On the
on
Big
national
Ten,
TV.
correct, but some of those
I
games are on the Big Ten Network.
Right, but they're still at game times. The Big Ten Network is a network you can watch on most cable networks.
Hmm.
The Pac-12 network shows a bunch of different games that you have to record, that you have to buy a package to get. So I think
Yeah.
he's getting exposure at Washington because Washington was better than everyone expected. But that's the type of guy, that's it. When you go through looking at that, that's a head coach thing. You look at and trying to figure out, how do I keep that guy here? It's not necessarily just about him, but there could be a running back that you brought in, that
So
leaves to go somewhere else. It's just about bringing. I think it starts with the head coach, and it's the program itself. He's got to do a better job of keeping guys in his system.
So when you're looking at that as the AD then of Indiana, and you're seeing Penix or some of these guys leave your program and find success at a Pac-12, a big Pac-12 school or a big ACC school, maybe not the Clemson, but maybe you go to Florida State or Miami, or you go to North Carolina and you find success there. Are you looking at Tom Allen? Are you saying, "Hey, you're not our guy anymore. You're letting
I think
all this talent leave," and
I I think that the Penix leaving Indiana was not. It was about the offense. Indiana runs a slower offense. Penix has, as we've seen, an incredible arm. So the new coach out at Washington is Kalen DeBoer. He's from Fresno State. He coached Jake Hayner, uh, which is basically a spread offense. So I think that was the biggest draw for Penix was the offense, um, as well as the exposure. Washington is a top tier Pac-12 program. Uh, the TV exposure is probably the same as Indiana, honestly. But I do think, like, if I were a top tier transfer, I wouldn't look at Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, Sparty, because I think the Big Ten's divisions are hurting these teams. Because why would I want to go to Indiana when I have to play Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State every single year? Where I can go out to the West Coast and play in the Pac-12, where half the teams don't play defense and
fair.
put up bigger numbers and have better weather.
I can't I can't argue on that point either, or
Yeah.
on that point, Drew. That makes a lot of sense. And you're not wrong. Why would you want to transfer into Indiana if you're a big name recruit, knowing you have to play Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State every year? Now, do you think? And I know we're going to talk about this later here, because there are rumors that we are moving away from a divisions in the Big Ten, and we may just go to a quote unquote what is it, 3-6-6 format type
Yeah.
deal, and
Odds.
it's almost a round robin, if you will. Best two teams will go to the Big Ten championship. Do you think going to that format is going to help your Indianas, your Marylands, your Rutgers? Do you guys think that it's going to help those guys, especially not just take the transfer portal out of it? Do you think that's going to help in them convincing some of these higher end 3 and 4 star recruits to come to their schools?
I think
Yeah.
over time, yeah, because
Mhm.
over time teams are most likely going to have better records.
Yeah, there's going to be
That's
more parity.
assuming.
It's all going
Yeah.
to float to the middle.
Corey?
I'm kind of in between. I don't. I think recruiting is something that you either can do or you can't do. It's either you either got it or you don't. Everybody is a personable person and they have their own niche in a certain thing. But I think when it comes down to it, I don't know. Yeah, I guess Indiana may have a better opportunity to grab other guys, but does that actually help them compete to make the Big Ten championship? I'm not so sure. So I think it starts. I mean, it's kind of like where you're at, You know you're at Indiana. You know where you fit into the Big Ten, and you have to find the guys that fit into that mold and potentially maybe get a few guys outside of that mold that maybe can push you higher. I think it's just realistic expectations for a school at Indiana is the biggest key. I think it's a big year for Tom Allen, and to see if if he doesn't do anything this year, I think it might be time to move on.
Yeah, because what were they last year? They were 2-7, I believe, in the Big Ten. Um, they did not. They were 4-8 all of last year, 2-7 in the Big Ten. So I mean, nowhere to go but up. Um, we're gonna recap obviously Indiana's spring game next week and see what we liked and did not like about their spring game. Before we see anything out of Indiana really on film, um, do you guys think Indiana improves to a 6-6 team? Are they a bowl? Are they going bowling this year? Early predictions on that?
My early prediction, I have them at 4 wins. The schedule's kind of tough. They open up with Ohio State, at Michigan, at Maryland, at Penn State, at Illinois, at Purdue. I mean, the schedule's not favorable for them.
No, it's
Yeah.
definitely not a favorable schedule for.
Plus, they pull Wisconsin out of the West,
Ooh,
so that sucks.
Looking at the schedule going into this season, opening up with Ohio State, and like Drew said, at Michigan, Penn State, Illinois. They squeaked by Illinois 23-20 last year. Took them double overtime to beat Sparty at Sparty last year. That's half their wins. Louisville, Akron, Indiana State. You might get 3 wins there, but I don't know where you're going to find a fourth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Unless you
Louisville's
just
going to be a
squeak one
tough one.
by.
yeah, I don't think they're gonna go bowling. They have a very tough schedule. And I'll say this, I think it's a good thing and bad thing that they open up the season with Ohio State. It's a good thing because it gets them on a primetime game. They get some exposure early in the season. But it's a bad thing because if you get blown out of the water of that game, like if you just get blown out, that's going to really set the tone for the rest of your season. And that could really kill a lot of kids in your locker room's confidence.
Yeah.
I don't think
Don't
that game
forget,
starts as a blowout.
don't forget, Indiana always plays Michigan and Ohio State tough. Always.
They do.
They
They
do.
do.
They
But
do. I'm
and you're
just
So,
going
and I think
into yeah.
And I think the beginning of the year, it actually is more beneficial to Indiana because Ohio State is going to be going through and figuring out a few things that we're going to be talking about here shortly. But
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think, I think I would rather, if I'm Tom Allen, I'm looking at that and going, oh, okay, I'd rather play Ohio State week 1 than week 8.
Oh, no doubt,
Yeah.
obviously, but I'm
Sure.
just saying it's a good and I mean, there's obviously positives to it, but I think the big negative to playing a team like Ohio State or Michigan, Penn State, first game of the season if you're Indiana, or Rutgers, Maryland, or whatever, is if you get blown out in that game, that's a horrible tone setter for your
Yeah.
locker room the rest of the season.
That can kill the fan base too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we just got blown out by Ohio
Well, we
State.
we had hope. I guess we don't have hope anymore.
Right. It's kind of like almost being a Browns fan going into week 1.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, that was a Drew, I do want to thank you for that beautiful breakdown of Hoosier football for us. Appreciate that. And let's move on here to Happy Valley. It looks like they're going to have a quarterback battle too this spring. Looks like I mean they got a couple. They may have a running back, but I think Kavion Lee is going to probably take that as long as with Tank Smith being the redshirt senior there. What are you guys looking out of Penn State going into here to this 2023 season?
I'm gonna come in with a hot break before we do that. Tiger has made the cut.
Yes,
Nice.
So
let's go
just
Tiger!
quick, tying the record for most cuts made at Masters in history at 23. I
Ooh,
couldn't let that slip by.
I love it. Thank you for that, Ethan. I appreciate you, buddy. Let's go, Tiger.
Um, for Penn State's spring game, there's a few things I'm looking at. Obviously, I think the running backs, the duo running backs that they had last year were exciting. They ran for almost 2,000 yards and 22 touchdowns last year, so I look for them to kind of up the ante a little bit. They're the heart and soul of the team. I think Penn State, it's all about quarterback play. Um, I mean, when you get good quarterback play, they will be very solid. Drew Aller is the guy I think who Penn State fans have been waiting for a long time. Kid is a local kid from Ohio, from Medina, Ohio. He's 6'5", 240. He's got the frame. He's got the talent. So I'm hoping that he can kind of put it all together and be a stud this year. I think, again, we talk about the O line. You know, you talk about in the Big Ten, running the football, protecting the quarterback. Their O line is solid. It's going to be the best part of this team, especially with a bunch of young talent around Drew Aller and the running back. So I think the O line is the key to this. I like the defense. The defense was solid last year. I'm a little interested to see how their corners recover after losing a few to the draft, but their pass rush is always good at Penn State. They always have a guy who will come off the edge and make plays. So it's looking pretty sunny in Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just taking a look at their roster. They have a lot of experience on this team. They have a lot of vets on this team, a lot of juniors and seniors, some redshirt sophomores, which means they're basically juniors, right? Um, so when I'm looking at Penn State, if I'm being honest, I think the question marks on their team do not reside on anybody who's taken the field, in my opinion. Where I think things lie is your head coach, CEO, James Franklin, and your offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Mike Urich, and then now your new defensive coordinator, Manny Diaz. I think it depends on those three individuals how well this team actually does perform. They have the talent. We've seen the talent. We've seen what a lot of these young kids can do. Corey, like you said, they have probably one of the best 1-2 punches at running back in the Big Ten. They have some stud wide receivers. Um, they have what you're going to get out of them on defense. So I really think is James Franklin the CEO that everybody thinks he is in Happy Valley, and I think that's where the 2023's Penn State team comes down to him and your two coordinators.
It's fair. Yeah, offensively, Drew LR from Medina, Mr. Football Ohio 2021. He's the clear cut starter. He's got the arm, the IQ, every bit capable taking this team forward. He's going to have a huge help at running back with, who they've got there. They've got their Nick Singleton, Tank Smith. I mean, Singleton might be the best back in Big Ten. Uh, Massive ability there. They brought up, Abdul Carter, if he can fill in for Jair Brown at corner, huge defensive strength. And they've not really lost a step at wide receiver. Keandre Lambert Smith, 3 catches, 124 yards, and a touchdown in the Rose Bowl. If he can continue production like that against the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, it all comes down to if James Franklin, like you said, I agree. If he can keep the head on this team, they're a dark horse to win the East Division and top Ohio State and Michigan to make the championship game on that side.
Absolutely. I mean, and they have a very, very favorable schedule um, for Penn State. Like they open the season against West Virginia, which I think is a favorable game. And then they play Delaware, obviously a very favorable game. And then they have to travel to Illinois. They go to Iowa, or then they have Iowa at home, which is I think it's going to be a pushover. Then they go to Northwestern, and then they have UMass as their third not out of conference game. right before they play Ohio State, where they go to Columbus. And then from there, they have Indiana at home, at Maryland, home against Michigan, home against Rutgers, and then they end the year at Michigan State. Um,
Yeah.
that's a very
Um,
favorable schedule.
and you only have 5 road games.
Yeah.
So that's you don't have to go to Michigan. You get Michigan at home. You don't have to go to Indiana. You don't have to go to Iowa. I mean, that's those are three strong stadiums, regardless of how good the team is.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and their toughest road game, I mean, I think we all would agree would be October 21st when they have to travel to Columbus.
That's probably the toughest game on their
Yeah.
schedule, looking at where
Yeah.
everything's at.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, because I mean, they get the defending two-time back-to-back Big Ten champions at home. What else more could you want when you're trying to make, a run when you have a veteran team?
At
And
night.
that's
It'll be
yeah,
a night game.
Oh, it's going to be the
night
whiteout.
game, Happy Valley. I mean, you're looking at game 10 going to potentially 9-1 on the season. That's your season right there. Saturday, November 11th at home.
I would mark I would mark that down on the calendar too, like Ethan just said. That game right there could be the season for Penn State this year.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
other than
Let,
that, I mean, go ahead, Drew.
let me just run down because I I've been on this Penn State train for a minute. This team is primed to explode. I think they're easily a double-digit win team.
Okay.
We talked about Drew Aller. Uh, I've watched some high school tape. Kid looks amazing. The size is awesome. The arm is great. The running back room is absolutely stacked. Nicholas Singleton, Kate, Katron Allen, Kayvon Lee. They brought in London Montgomery, who's a freshman, uh, as well as some transfers. Let me talk about their transfer class because I absolutely love their transfer class. There's only 5 of them, but they are 5 big-time players. Malik McLean is a wide receiver out of Florida State. Dude's a 4-star. He's big time. Another wide receiver out of Kent State, Dante Cephas, arguably the best wide receiver in the MAC last year. Uh, to replace Joey Porter Jr., they bring in Storm Duck, cornerback out of North Carolina. He will be playing Sundays. And then to expand that already good running back class, they brought in transfer Trey Potts, running back out of Minnesota, who's got about 3 or 4 years of experience. Seems like he's been there forever. So on offense, I think they got all the weapons they need. It'll come down to the offensive line, which I don't know for sure, but I assume they're pretty good. Uh, Defensive side of the ball, they bring back 75% of their production from a defense that was tops in the conference last year. Uh, One guy that should be watched is number 11, Abdul Carter, who might be the best defensive player in the conference. The dude wears number 11. So if you wear number 11 at Penn State on defense, it means you're a dog because LeVar Arrington, Navarro Bowman, Micah Parsons are all number 11s. So this dude, that's pretty good company for him to be in. Yeah. So, like you guys said, it comes down to James Franklin. Can he put it all together? Can they make it happen? And yeah, I think they do. I really like this Penn State team.
I I think that they, like I was saying, I don't know. I was just looking at Drew Aller, 's recruiting process, and I now after I'm looking at it, I know I've watched the tape. I'm kind of almost questioning how good this kid may be. Um, his first major offer was from Iowa, and then his next major offer obviously was from Penn State, and then Michigan. He received a few others, and then it was like he only made his a visit, I believe, from what I see from 247 on their recruiting trail of him. He committed to Penn State, made an unofficial visit, made an official visit, made 3 visits to Penn State, gets an offer from Ohio State, and then signs with them. Um, so I know I've seen the tape. I'm just not convinced how good this kid actually is. I gotta see him in a college game to see if this kid can hang. But I do think it is. I do think it all, like I was saying, does ride on. We do have to. It all rides on what James Franklin does. Um,
Yeah, but even if Drew Allar's not the be all end all, he's got the talent to take the weight off his shoulders. He's
right.
not going
He's
to have all the stress on him.
it's an upgrade over Sean Clifford.
By
Absolutely.
far.
Well,
And the dude hasn't even played yet.
I mean, I think anybody's an upgrade over Sean Clifford.
Well, and he
um,
doesn't have to be Superman. He just
Hmm.
has to play within himself. There's enough talent around him that if he is average, Penn State is a double-digit win team.
right.
Agreed. 100%.
Absolutely. Um, let's get to Ohio State spring game.
Hold
Here
up.
we got Kyle McCord, with Devin Brown going into what is presumed to be a quarterback battle in Columbus. Um, I will say this: if you're watching Ohio State spring game or going to be going to it, don't expect to see the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr. out there. Don't expect to see the likes of some of these like Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams out there. It has been reported that definitely Marv will not be participating. They don't want to they don't want him injured, which I don't blame them for. So I guess what I'm saying is you're not going to see a full strength. You're not going to see a lot of stars out there for Ohio State. But there is going to be a big quarterback battle. You're going to see a lot of the young receivers Brian Hartline has brought in that he's been praised for nationally of all these 5-star wide receiver recruits coming to him. So what do you guys expect to see out of Ohio State in their spring game here?
And not a lot. Show me the depth. Show me what you're going to bring that's not already known about. Show me if Jaden Ballard can fill in where Smith and Jigba is going to leave going to the draft. Show me that you can replace Paris Johnson Jr. and Luke Weiler with most likely Jacob James and Josh Fryer.
Hmm.
Uh, Show me if you're going to use your tight ends to catch the ball or just block as another offensive lineman for your running backs and receivers. And then give me an idea who your quarterback's going to be. I don't have a whole lot of notes on Ohio State simply because, yes, they're going to be good, but the holes they have to fill, they just need to show me the depth is going to be there to fill those holes. If you don't have the depth, I don't know if you're going to hang in the East this year.
Yeah, I agree. There's not much to look for in Ohio State, really. I mean, they recruit at such a level that it's kind of just next guy up is we assume is going to be good. The offensive line losing Paris Johnson, Dewan Jones, and Luke Weipler is pretty big. But as I said, they recruited at a high level, so they should be able to replace those guys. The quarterback battle is probably the biggest question, right? McCord, Devin Brown, and there's actually a third quarterback transfer from Oregon State, Tristan Gebbia, I believe.
Okay.
He's got 4 years experience, mostly backup roles at Oregon State, but the kid has experience. So should be a pretty fun QB battle. There's some who's going to be wide receiver 3, I guess. Brandon Ennis, the 5-star recruit. I don't know if he's in for spring or not.
He is.
Okay. Noah Rogers and Cartel Tate, they are also
Your
freshmen
your wide
in for spring.
receivers, from my understanding, what has been released for Ohio State is going to be you're going to see a Mecca out there
Mm-hmm.
for maybe a series or two, and then from there on out you're going to see like Jaden Ballard, uh, Xavier Johnson apparently went down with an injury, so you won't be seeing much of him. But you'll be seeing like Jalen Ballard, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, all these young guys are going to get a lot of snaps here on next Saturday in Columbus. Go ahead, Drew. I just wanted to fill that in for you.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, the QB battle, the depth, just ready to see some of these young kids that'll be superstars here in a year or two.
Absolutely. If you had Corey, your thoughts on it before I ask my
So
next
I
question?
mean, it's as you guys have said, it's Ohio State. You expect the next guy up. The few things that I'm kind of pointing to, we've all touched on it. The quarterback and the third wide receiver, I think, are the main things. But I think the biggest thing for Ohio State is going to be the depth. Last year, you were injury prone at the running back position. We're using all sorts of talent that to try to figure out who that guy is. So I think it's really important to make sure you have some some strength in numbers, as I like to say, right? To make sure that if
Absolutely.
one guy goes down, you've got another guy that can put you right in the same exact spot. So I think that that's important. I know that your linebackers are really solid. CJ Hicks and Steel Chambers, although Steel Chambers has been out, CJ Hicks has been filling in. So I look for him to kind of be a tackling machine and a guy. And then to me, I'm a line guy, so I like to see what happens on the defensive line and the offensive line. Again, replacing starters on the offensive line is never an easy task. Although you have the talent, it's not necessarily just about the talent. It's kind of as a group how they do together. Although you have a lot of guys, I think the offensive line will be just fine. The defensive line, you've got a bunch of talent, a lot of talent returning. But it's just, there were a few times last year you looked at Ohio State and you go, man, their line is getting eaten alive. So you'd like to see them make some changes and hopefully their line can be better. And then to me, the biggest question mark outside of the players is Brian Hartline's offense going to look the same as Ryan Day? Because again, Ryan Day, unbelievable play caller, unbelievable offensive mind, is turning over play calling duties to someone who has not called plays before. So it's just one of those things that is it going to be just a smooth transition that they're going to move? Oh, they're still scoring 40 points a game, or are you going to have a little bit of a struggle when a first time play caller comes down to it? Is he wanting to run the ball? Is he wanting to throw the ball? It's just kind of an interesting dynamic to kind of think about. But Ohio State is loaded, should be a double digit win team, should be in the college football playoff talk, and even potentially winning the Big Ten and winning a national title.
Absolutely, absolutely. My two big things that I'm going to be looking at for is going to be how well is the offensive line playing, and then honestly, are people going to be in position on defense? That has been a big issue the past couple years in Columbus, so that's a couple things that I'd be looking out for. Ryan Day is quote unquote the quarterback guru, so I want to be, if you're a Buckeye out there, I wouldn't be too worried about how well your quarterback's going to play. Ryan always seems to have that guy in a position to play well. And I don't know if that's from him, like you said, Corey, it was him calling plays, and that was a big part of it, or is it just the type of system he likes to run and the way he coaches? I'm going to end it there for Ohio State because we'll dive in a lot here next week. We did a segment last week, guys. Go ahead, Ethan.
Call that timeout. Overlooked the Michigan State spring game happening next week also.
Sparty is happening next weekend. Quick thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Just wondering if they can restore the defense. They were 94th last year in points allowed per drive, 88th in yards per play, 72nd in defensive red zone. Is Peyton Thorne still QB1? Noah Kim and Caton Hauser are going to be pressuring him at QB position. And they moved 60-year running back Harold Joyner the third to DB. Probably going to be a big impression on defense. They also brought in two 1,000-yard rushers from UConn and South Florida. and then some other, fill-in players as needed. Defensively, lost a lot of transfers, but most of them didn't have any play time. So, hoping the guys that they brought in, a couple of guys, they brought an edge rusher from Penn State, Florida State tackle, got a defensive lineman from A&M, and a corner, Samar Melvin from Wisconsin. Uh, Hoping that Michigan State defense can live up to what they've got, what they've had in the past, and hopefully they can, rejuvenate that Michigan State program that definitely saw a very down year last year. They also only have 5 road games this year, and I think their toughest game outside of traveling to Ohio State in November is going to be at home. They get Washington at home, and I think that while being tough, is a chance for an upset unless they give them the 3:30 time slot. Everyone knows West Coast teams traveling east don't usually do well, both professionally and at the collegiate level.
Absolutely, absolutely. Quick thoughts there on Michigan's spring game, Corey and Drew.
It's tough coming. That's really the main thing. I mean, it's when you think about Michigan State, you think about them with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. So they have the talent. They're going to have a top 25 recruiting class coming in. It's just they have the talent. It's just going to be about if they can be in the right positions, the right plays can be called. It just, and again, defensively, they couldn't stop anybody last year. They got
Yeah.
torched in every single game. Didn't matter if you were playing a top team or a bottom team; they were getting smoked. So I mean, their defense can't be any worse than it was last year. So you'd like to think that it would be better and an improvement. Again, it's another big school. You'd like to think they would improve on what they were last year. But it falls on Mel Tucker.
It's tough coming. I agree. I agree. I think and another team, like we said with Penn State, falls on James Franklin. For Michigan State, this season falls on Mel Tucker. Drew, your opinion on Michigan State?
Yeah, I agree. It's a big year for Mel Tucker. The transfer portal class, not bad. They really addressed the defensive side of the ball, which is good. Recruiting class was fourth best in the conference, which is solid, kind of their usual. The schedule's not too favorable. They pull Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota out of the West. Could be better. Yeah, it's a weird season for Michigan State football.
Absolutely.
And 6 wins will not get it done. Six
No.
wins will not be good enough.
That's
No,
unacceptable.
Spartyville.
that's not how you play football in East Lansing.
Absolutely. Guys, as you can see with the graphic over to our left here, right? We did a segment last week on the most hated programs in the Big Ten. I like to throw it. Let's do we're gonna do the opposite here. As you guys can see, the most loved teams in the Big Ten. We did a point system where if you ranked the number one, the team the most loved, you got 16 points, and then we reversed it all the way from 1 point equals, or first place equals 16, all the way down to 16 equals 1 point. So we had actually a very kind of cool list here from all four of us. And those are our point totals. We have USC at 57 points, being number one. Number two, Ohio State at 55. Michigan at number three with 53. Illinois, Nebraska, Minnesota, Northwestern, Michigan State, Rutgers, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, Penn State was kind of low in my when I was going through it. I was kind of surprised on that. And then we had Indiana, Iowa, and Purdue to round out the future 16 teams of the Big Ten. Um, Guys, your thoughts on did we do? I mean, I'm just interested to see your guys' thoughts as I was doing this last night. A lot of this was like, I see this. Okay, we're all in the same area. There was just like, okay, like I didn't think that we did too bad of a job here. I think it was all pretty fair. Um, why don't you guys go ahead? Either it doesn't matter who starts. Just talk about what your criteria was, how you ranked the teams. How close was your original list to what, it all came from all four of us adding our totals together.
Yeah. I had USC finished at 1, you said?
Yep.
Yeah. I had them at 4 on mine. My top 5 was Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, and Illinois. Uh, Mine came down to overall both program success and a mix of that and fan base. Northwestern fans, they don't have one of the best coaches in college football, had a great season in basketball. They're a good time to be around. Very chill group of people. And then Ohio State, I think that they probably have one of the most passionate fan bases in all of sports. It's really hard to out passion an Ohio State fan when it comes to talking about their team. Michigan, one of my favorite venues to travel to, great town, the people there, good time. And USC, the success they have. I love Lincoln Riley. I think that program franchise as a whole is great, and same goes for Illinois. Fan bases, game day experience, team successes in the past. One state of Illinois, man, top one, number one, number 5.
Absolutely. Corey, how did your list compare? Did you, how did?
Well, for me, I had USC number one. It was to me when I did a scale, I obviously you look at the big schools and you're like, okay, their passion, the size, the fan bases, everything is going to be extremely large, right? So I kind of tried to take that a little bit out of it and go for more as a whole university, just in everything. So for me, USC, just again being in California, are always talked about in the news. Most famous celebrities follow USC. So to me, it was just they're the most loved. And then after that, I had Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, and Rutgers were in my top 5. I think it's important that people, I mean, especially for like Rutgers, although again, small city in New Jersey, not necessarily, but that's where college football started. So obviously, if college football started there, the passion, everything is going to be there. And overall, just a great place. Northwestern. I had Michigan and Ohio State at 7 and 8 on my list. Again, you could put them top 3 in any category you talk about in the Big Ten, whether it's most
Absolutely.
hated, most loved. So regardless, they're going to be up there. But I mean, I think to me, it was more about the smaller schools. Illinois was voted the most like the cleanest and prettiest campus in the Big Ten and like
Absolutely.
most friendly place. So to me, like that's something you kind of have to consider, especially when you talk about these smaller schools because they don't get a lot of love considering you see those top tier schools all the way at the top. So for me, Illinois was up there. Indiana, I mean, just tradition, the tradition at Indiana, the tradition at Rutgers, the tradition at Minnesota, those things, not necessarily maybe in basketball and football like we mostly talk about, but overall as a whole, I think that was kind of a big play in my opinion. Obviously I had Wisconsin and Penn State towards the bottom. Penn State I feel like was a really loved and would have been near the top. And then after the Joe Paterno and all of that stuff, I think they kind of got a bad look and that kind of pushed them way to the bottom. Wisconsin, no issues with Wisconsin. I think it's a great place. I'm not, again, bigger school, not sure that they have as much as the others.
Absolutely. Drew, how did you come up with your rankings? What did you base them off of?
Yeah, okay. So my criteria started with fan base loyalty and size and reputation. After that, I looked at attendance numbers and viewership numbers, media numbers. After that, tradition and success, both academically and all sports, not just football. And then finally, revenue generation. So yeah, my 1-2 was Michigan, Ohio State. Obviously, they generate the most revenue. Academics are awesome, especially at Michigan. The fan base size and loyalty is huge for both programs. However, I do think there is a portion of both fan bases that are fair weather fans, and that's just because it's so big. Like there's not your
Absolutely.
entire fan base is going to be diehard.
Right.
But for most of the week, I actually had Nebraska at number one because I think Nebraska's fan base is one of the best in college football, as well as baseball, volleyball, softball. Plus, they had that like 60-year sellout streak. So
Absolutely, they did.
Nebraska people show up no matter what. So shout out to Nebraska. I also had Penn State up there. Penn State fans are crazy loyal. Um, from a national eye point, I can see the hate because of the Joe Pa, the Jerry Sandusky fair. I had USC and UCLA kind of in the middle because I've never been around either of their fan bases, so I'm just kind of basing it off of how they feel. I wonder if UCLA basketball fans like football, and I wonder if USC football fans like basketball. So I don't know. I feel like there might be a lot of fair weather fans in those programs. And uh, I don't know. I was surprised to see Iowa so low. I had Iowa at number 8. I think the Iowa fan base is very diehard, just like Wisconsin. Iowa and Wisconsin travel very well. Um, yeah, I think it was a pretty good list we came out with.
Absolutely, I do too. The only thing as I was, going through, totaling up everything, last night was the only surprise to me was Penn State was as low as they were. Um, and then it, like Corey said, it popped into my head. Oh, well, Jerry Sandusky. Okay, you know, um, that has a lot to going into that. Another thing that I thought I was really surprised at was Minnesota being ranked above Northwestern in total points. I wasn't expecting that. But the I know Drew, Ethan, and I went to the Big Ten championship when Northwestern was there one year and got to meet a couple famous alum. Won't name drop, but we got to meet a couple famous alum from Northwestern. We walked into their tailgate and at the Big Ten, fan festivities, guys. But I think we all three walked out of there was like, wow, those people are just super nice. Didn't care if
Okay.
you were wearing like a Rutgers shirt on Ohio State, Michigan, whatever. They were just, oh, hey guys, how's it going? You know, we're just glad to be here type deal. But kind of, but like it's the truth. They were just glad
Yeah.
to be in Indy.
Yep.
Glad to support their team, win or lose. And I think that does goes a long way when you're talking about, as a school in a whole. Like, and I think we all did a really great job of taking into consideration how the fan bases are, how the fan bases interact with each other. So I'm very happy with the list we came out with. Um, and I think we could also, stand by this list pretty hard, with how they are ranked from top to bottom. Um, I do have one other thing. We're not going to talk about it today. We're going to get into it on another show. I'm going to throw this graphic up here. It says college towns rankings, ranking the Big Ten college towns. How, not um their football or whatever. What is Columbus? How would you rate Columbus as a college town? How would you rank Ann Arbor? How would you rank Champaign, West Lafayette, Bloomington, Des Moines, Happy Valley, East Lansing, as a city as a whole? So we'll get into that. I did pop up this graphic right here from College Town Rankings according to Clever.com. But we're gonna do a similar thing next week. We're gonna throw those up there as well. Drew, let's get to your Big Ten Athlete of the Week.
All right. So, athlete of the week is Taryn Kern, second baseman, freshman out of Indiana softball. IU softball is absolutely amazing, in case you didn't know. They are currently 30-9 on the season. They have won 23 straight games. They have not lost since March 5th, which I think might have been our first show. So Taryn Kern, San Jose, California native, leads the Big Ten in slugging percentage, OBS, OPS, RBIs, home runs, walks, and hit by pitches. She's currently second in the conference in batting average and runs scored. She actually yesterday, IU beat Minnesota. Taryn Kern went 2 for 4 with a dinger and 3 ribbies. That home run she hit yesterday breaks the single season record for IU women's softball. So she is now the all-time leader with 17 dingers on the season.
Wow.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. On Tuesday, Indiana beat Western Kentucky. On Tuesday, she hit her record tying 16th dinger. So she's hit dingers in back-to-back games. Last weekend, Indiana swept Ohio State over 3 games. She hit 438 with a dinger, 4 runs, and 3 ribbies. Before
I can't. Every time I hear dinger,
it's a ding.
all I think of is, "Hi, my name is Big Al, and I hit dingers."
That's what they're called, man. Let's see here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
You're good, dude. You're good. Last week against Purdue, she had 2 hits, both dingers. Duh. 3 ribbies, 2 runs scored. Shoot, 2 weeks ago, Indiana swept Maryland, who was ranked 22nd in the country. Maryland Terps, very good softball team. Taryn Kern earned her 3rd straight Big Ten Freshman of the Week. She hit in that stand against Maryland. She had an OPS I've never seen before, 2.11. I don't know how you get a 2 OPS, but that's absolute insanity. So yeah, dude, Taryn Kern is an absolute monster, and she's only a freshman. So shout out to her. I also want to give shout outs to Brianna Copeland, who is currently 14-0 as a pitcher, 2.65 ERA for Indiana. She also happens to have 6 dingers. Taylor Minnick, 7 dingers. Avery Parker, 5 dingers. And then shout outs to Sarah Stone, Cora Bassett, and Kinsey Mitchell.
How many dingers they got?
They got enough. They got enough, bro. This Indiana softball team is absolutely awesome. So hopefully they can get a shot at a national title.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ethan, you got something to tell us here?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, about the thing?
About the thing.
The thing.
The thing.
Yes. So we're still trying to get to 100 subscribers. So please watch us, subscribe to us, click the like, whatever you got to do to help us out. We are looking for number 100. We're going to look towards a giveaway at that time. We're still compiling all that together, but definitely trying to get to 100. The magic number right now for our giveaway is 100 subscribers, and we're creeping up there.
We are creeping. We are creeping like Rich Rob. Rich Rob. All right, guys. Well, I do want to thank you all for your time here this Saturday morning. Thank you for everything. Thank you for guys for coming on. We will definitely see you guys next week as well, probably on Sunday. Peace out, everyone.
Be good.